Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to episode 72 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation TRICYCLE. We begin this episode at the Gilligan home on Saturday, and we see that the Gilligan brothers, Number 2 and Tommy, are cleaning the garage. Apparently, the dog has been missing for some time now, 3 months if I'm not mistaken. While cleaning the garage, Tommy finds a tricycle, and Number 2 explains that the tricycle was his, Number 2's, when he was younger, but he also mentions in a rather dismissive manner that he no longer needed the tricycle after he got a bike. Tommy, on the other hand, thinks that the tricycle is actually pretty cool, and he also mentions that with a little polish and fine-tuning, the tricycle could become the Tommymobile. Shortly after that, Number 3, Number 4, and Number 5 arrive just outside of the Gilligan home while riding their bikes, and they remind Number 2 that they're all supposed to meet up with Number 1 at the Kids Next Door Central Bike Hub. Number 2 gets his bike, which he calls the Cruise Master, and he prepares to join his teammates. Tommy offers to join them while riding the tricycle, but Number 4 and Number 5 mock the tricycle. Number 2 suggests that Tommy continue to clean the garage, and he makes a promise to Tommy relating to the Cruise Master. If I'm not mistaken, I think the promise is that Tommy can help Number 2 with some maintenance on the Cruise Master, but in any case, the 4 present Sector V operatives are on their way to the Central Bike Hub, and some of them are speculating about why exactly they were requested to go to the Central Bike Hub. We also find out that a great number of Kids Next Door operatives have also been requested to go to the Central Bike Hub, so they figure that the reason must be an important reason at the very least. Number 3 thinks that they're going to throw her a surprise party. Number 4 responds that Number 3's birthday isn't for a while. Number 3 responds that makes it even more of a surprise. And this is a running gag throughout the episode. Number 3 thinking that a surprise party for her is going to happen, and Number 4 pointing out that Number 3's birthday isn't for a while. But in any case, the 4 present Sector V operatives use a secret pathway located within a car wash in order to reach the Central Bike Hub. It's a Kids Next Door treehouse with a bike theme to it, and it's located in the middle of a forest. So after the 4 present Sector V operatives arrive at the Central Bike Hub, they're greeted by a Kids Next Door operative, and this operative leads them to a meeting room, and we see that a great number of operatives have already arrived in the meeting room. There's a Kids Next Door operative standing on the stage, and his codename or designated number is revealed to be Number 10 Speed. Number 10 Speed explains that the operatives stationed at the Central Bike Hub are tasked with making sure that bike riding is safe for kids. And he's called this meeting because of some recent activity that has made them concerned. Yes, they've noticed some recent activity that has led them to become concerned about something. So this activity has to do with Chad Dixon, the former Number 274. Number 10 Speed explains that recently the operatives stationed at the Central Bike Hub have noticed how Chad has been using his Teen Ninja bike to visit multiple houses in rapid succession. This has been happening recently, and Number 10 Speed suspects that Chad is trying to recruit more Teen Ninjas and planning to attack the Central Bike Hub. So Number 10 Speed thinks that the best course of action is for them to defeat Chad before he has the chance to recruit more Teen Ninjas. And Number 10 Speed admits that most operatives don't have any experience fighting Chad, but he does recognize that the Sector V operatives have the most experience fighting Chad. So Number 10 Speed lets number one take a chance to give a speech or give a plan. So number one is about to give his speech, but he's interrupted when another Kids Next Door operative reports that Chad is already on the move again on his Teen Ninja bike. So yes, the Kids Next Door operatives decide to set their plan into motion now that they know that Chad is going to all these houses in quick succession again. So number one and number 10 Speed, along with a few other Kids Next Door operatives, are going to, or yes, they're in the central control room. They're monitoring the radar to make sure that they can find where everyone is. Yes, they're going to keep track of where everyone is using a radar. And the 4 other Sector V operatives, along with several other operatives, are on their bikes and they're going to try and chase after Chad. So yes, they set this plan into motion, and the 4 present Sector V operatives, along with several other Kids Next Door operatives, are trying to chase after Chad. And they're behind Chad, but in front of Chad, we see that Tommy is on the tricycle, and he's trying to help defeat Chad. Chad is able to evade Tommy, though, and so the Kids Next Door operatives try to stop so that they don't crash into Tommy, but they end up crashing into each other, which also causes some damage to their bikes. Tommy isn't caught in the Tommy isn't caught in the crash, but the next scene, yes, after the crash happens, we then cut back to the Gilligan home, and Tommy is grumbling about the aftermath of the crash, where the Kids Next Door operatives were yelling at Tommy, and they also were mocking the tricycle. And Tommy vows that the Tommymobile will be improved and be greater than any bike. So Tommy begins to modify the tricycle, or the Tommymobile. And the next scene seems to suggest that it's the next day, and Tommy fell asleep in the garage, but an alarm goes off in the garage, which gets number 2's attention. Yes, this was an alarm to warn number 2 about if any other information came about regarding Chad's recent activity. And according to this report, Chad apparently destroyed a bike rack at Gulliger Elementary School. Tommy offers to join in and help, but number 2 angrily points out what happened when Tommy tried to help the last time. And number 2 just tells Tommy to go watch some TV and let the Kids Next Door handle this. So number 2 leaves on the cruise master, and Tommy is grumbling over number 2's angry response. So number 2 meets up with number 3, number 4, number 5, and several other Kids Next Door operatives at Gulliger Elementary School. They do see the destroyed bike rack, but they notice that no bikes are present. Not even the remains of the bikes are present. So they think something is suspicious. It's like the bikes were stolen rather than being destroyed. But then they notice Chad zooming by in his Teen Ninja bike, so they decide to put a pin in that and just try and defeat Chad. So yes, the 4 present Sector V operatives and several other, at least the 4 present Sector V operatives are chasing after Chad right now. And they're about to work together to activate a 2x4 technology device. I believe it's called the Cyclo Cannon, if I'm not mistaken. But they're going to use this to try and stop Chad. But they're actually interrupted before they have the chance to actually activate their device when Tommy zooms by in the improved Tommymobile. Yes, the Tommymobile now has jet power, and Tommy on the Tommymobile zooms by the 4 present Sector V operatives and accidentally causes damage to their bikes. And we see that the Tommymobile also has these refrigerator weapons with food for ammunition. And Tommy does manage to Tommy manages to damage Chad's Teen Ninja bike to the point where it won't function anymore. But when Chad steps out of his vehicle, we see that he's wearing a pizza uniform along with battle-ready armor, and he has a pizza box with him. And Chad complains about how the kids next door have ruined his delivery. It's one of those, Chad is making one of those pizza deliveries where you have to deliver the pizza within a certain amount of time or else it's free for the customer. And Chad reveals that that the houses he was going to recently were so that he could get a car. Yes, Chad was trying to save money for a car. And number 4, though, points out that they saw the bike rack being destroyed at Gilligan Elementary School, but Chad doesn't know what they're talking about. He says he's been at the pizza parlor since 5 in the morning. And Chad is angry that his plans to get a new car have been derailed a bit because of this interrupted delivery. So Chad throws the pizza box onto number 4's head, and then he storms off. Tommy, though, thinks that Tommy is gloating about how the Tommy-mobile was able to defeat Chad, but number 4 expresses his anger towards the Tommy-mobile for getting in the way, and he also mocks the Tommy-mobile for being pink. Tommy, though, doesn't take too kindly to number 4 mocking the Tommy-mobile, and some of the other Sector V operatives present also voice grievances, even if not to the same extent that number 4's grievances were expressed. But yes, Tommy thinks that they're all just jealous of the Tommy-mobile, and he thinks the jealousy is because they know that the Tommy-mobile is better than any of their bikes. But number 4 just brushes this off and complains about the Tommy-mobile some more. And Tommy insists that they will see how great the Tommy-mobile really is before he leaves. So the next scene shows number 3 and number 4 walking. Yes, because their bikes were damaged, they can't actually ride their bikes, so they just have to carry their bikes while walking down the street. And while they're walking down the street, they reach a tunnel. And at the other end of the tunnel, it looks like the Tommy-mobile is there. But when number 4 number 4 continues to mock Tommy or still express anger towards Tommy for what happened earlier, but Tommy doesn't respond, and number 4 finds this number 3 and number 4 find this rather unsettling. And then the Tommy-mobile charges towards number 3 and number 4. Back at the Central Bike Hub, number 1 and number 10 Speed hear from several reports that more bikes have gone missing, similar to the bikes that were at Gilligan Elementary School, and they're trying to figure out why these bikes are disappearing. But then they receive. Another Kids Next Door operative informs them, though, that number 3 and number 4 were found by the med bike, and they were brought back to the Central Bike Hub. So number 1 and number 10 Speed go to see number 3 and number 4. They're injured, and they were brought to the Central Bike Hub by an operative who was riding a medical bike. And number 1 tries to inquire them about what happened, and they tell him about how Tommy apparently attacked them. Number 1 is baffled to hear that Tommy apparently attacked them, but number 1 contacts the Kids Next Door operatives that are still on their bikes right now and tells them to find Tommy and bring him to the Central Bike Hub. Number 2 and number 5 are among the operatives who hear number 1's message. And number 2 wonders what his younger brother has done. Number 5 figures it must be something serious if number 1 wants Tommy to be brought to the Central Bike Hub. So the 2 present Sector V operatives decide that they need to split up to cover more ground to find Tommy. So they split up, and number 5 goes one direction, number 2 goes another direction. And number 1 and number 10 Speed contact number 5 shortly after she and number 2 split up to let number 5 know that Tommy's signal on the radar, the radar has picked up Tommy's signal, and number 1 is trying to tell number 5 that she should be running into Tommy pretty soon. And at this point, we, the viewers, are seeing the scene from the central bike hub. We're not seeing the scene from number 5's perspective. We just hear number 5's voice. And number 5 tells number 1 that she doesn't see Tommy anywhere, even though, according to the radar, Tommy is right in front of number 5. And then the radar indicates that Tommy and number 5 passed each other, and number 5 still doesn't see Tommy. Tommy is now apparently behind number 5, and suddenly, number 5's communication breaks. Yes, when Tommy's signal appears behind number 5's signal on the radar, number 5 still insists that she doesn't see Tommy, and then her communication with number 1 and number 10 speed is canceled out, so there's just static now, and number 1 and number 10 speed don't know what's going on. Meanwhile, number 2 returns home, and he sees Tommy is watching TV. Number 2 inquires Tommy about what he was doing, but Tommy doesn't know what number 2 is talking about with regards to destroying other bikes. Tommy says he's just been watching the Yipper Marathon all afternoon. This confuses number 2, but he decides to inquire Tommy about where the tricycle is. Tommy says it should be in the garage, but when number 2 goes into the garage, the tricycle is gone, and Tommy walks in, and he's just as surprised as number 2 is that the tricycle is nowhere in sight. And number 2 seems to suspect something. And so, yes, number 2 suspects something, and he brings Tommy with him. So, yes, so number 2 tries to contact number 1, and number 1 comments that Tommy's signal is appearing behind number 2's signal on the radar, but number 2 reveals that the signal they're seeing is not Tommy. It's the tricycle. Yes, the tricycle is acting of its own accord, and the tricycle seems to have become giant-sized now. And yes, we do see that the Tommy Mobile in its giant form also has bigger weapons and bigger ammunition. Like instead of refrigerator weapons with food ammunition, the giant Tommy Mobile has like garage weapons and car ammunition. So number 2 and Tommy are trying to avoid the Tommy Mobile, which is chasing after them. Tommy doesn't understand why the tricycle is trying to attack them, but number 2 keeps trying to evade and come up with sneak attacks, but the tricycle is able to gain the upper hand against them. It eventually gets to the point where number 2 and Tommy feel that the only thing they can do is simply get the Tommy Mobile to lose track of them and head for the central bike hub. But the Gilligan brothers don't realize that the tricycle actually is hiding and watching where they're going. So the Gilligan brothers eventually arrive at the central bike hub, and so far it seems to be empty, but they quickly find out that the other operatives are all in the central control room, and number 1 tells number 2 that number 2 ended up accidentally revealing the central bike hub's location to the tricycle. The tricycle saw them use the secret pathway through the tricycle saw them use the secret pathway through the car wash, and now the giant tricycle is on its way towards the central bike hub with the intent of destroying it. Number 10 Speed also brings up that the tricycle has been stealing other bikes in order to improve itself. Yes, that's what's been happening to the other bikes. They've been they've been stolen by the Tricycle to make it bigger and much more powerful. And number 10 Speed thinks that that bike riding will no longer be safe if the central bike hub is destroyed. So they have to come up with a new plan. Yes, they have agreed on a plan where they're going to try and stop the Tricycle quickly before it reaches the central bike hub. Number 10 Speed contacted Kids Next Door Global Command, and yes, there's going to be some operatives are going to come through aerial vehicles or flying vehicles to help distract the giant Tricycle, and they're also going to use a K-strike against the Tricycle, and they're hoping that this will put a stop to the giant Tricycle. So the other Kids Next Door operatives sent by Global Command arrive, and they're trying to distract the giant Tricycle. And when it seems like they have the giant Tricycle where they want it, number 1 contacts number 362 on the moon base to let them know that they can begin the K-style, yes, or the K-strike, yes. Number 1 contacts number 362 on the moon base that they're ready to activate the K-strike, and number 362 tells number 2020 to take aim, and we see that the K-strike is a giant ketchup bottle. So yes, the moon base launches ketchup from a giant ketchup bottle on top of the giant Tricycle, but unfortunately it's not enough. Yes, the giant Tricycle is continuing to go on. A different operative actually acknowledges that ketchup probably wasn't the best way to try and stop the giant Tricycle. So now they're trying to figure out what can they do now. And number 2 notices that Tommy is gone. Tommy is now trying to climb up the giant Tricycle, and they do eventually find Tommy while he's in the middle of trying to climb the giant Tricycle. And it does take a while, but Tommy eventually does reach the top of the giant Tricycle. And we find out that the giant Tricycle is not actually the Tommy-mobile. No, the Tommy-mobile is piloting the giant Tricycle. And Tommy tries to figure out why the Tricycle is doing this. Obviously, the Tricycle can't talk, but it does communicate using a bike bell, or a Tricycle bell in this case. But yes, the ringing of a Tricycle bell is how the Tricycle communicates with Tommy. Yes, the Tricycle uses a Tricycle bell. Or yes, the ringing of a Tricycle bell is how the Tricycle communicates with Tommy, and Tommy seems to understand what the bell ringing means. So Tommy says that the Tricycle doesn't have to destroy all the other bikes to prove its superiority over all the other bikes, and Tommy Tommy tries to assure the Tricycle that he considers the Tricycle to be the coolest and fastest of bikes or trikes, and says that the Tricycle doesn't need to impress him, Tommy, because Tommy already likes the Tricycle the way it is. But then Tommy finds out that the Tricycle wasn't trying to impress him, Tommy. And number 2 arrives. Yes, number 2 has arrived. He's made it up to the top of the giant Tricycle. And number 2 admits that the Tricycle was trying to impress him, and the Tricycle doesn't seem to deny this. Number 2 figures that the Tricycle was angry at being abandoned by number 2 after number 2 got the Cruise Master. And yes, number 2 also refers to the Tricycle with female pronouns, by the way. But yes, number 2 tries to reason with the Tricycle that he couldn't ride a Tricycle forever. But the Tricycle is still not convinced, or the Tricycle doesn't really the tricycle doesn't seem to listen to reason. The tricycle doesn't seem to listen to reason with number 2, and the tricycle is still determined to try and destroy the central bike hub. And number 1 figures that they need to evacuate the central bike hub, but number 1 finds out that number 10 Speed refuses to leave. Number 1 comments about how everyone else left, and he refers to number 10 Speed by his first name, Lance. Number 10 Speed says that he wishes to have the same fate as the bikes in the central bike hub and the central bike hub itself. And number 2 sees that that the tricycle is still determined to go through with the plan to destroy the central bike hub. And so number 2 pleads with the tricycle not to go through with it. Number 2 says that he will do anything to get the tricycle to stop. And the tricycle actually does have something in mind. Yes, the tricycle has something in mind, has a request in mind for number 2 to do. Of course, we don't know what it is, what this request is because of the bell ringing, but number 2 knows what the tricycle is saying, and number 2 at first says he doesn't want to go through with that, but the tricycle, still goes ahead and tries to destroy the central bike hub. So number 2 does decide to, number 2 begrudgingly agrees to go along with the tricycle's request. So number 2 approaches the tricycle, and a blinding flash happens. We then cut to a later point in time, a few weeks later, and the central bike hub is fine. It looks like all the Kids Next Door operatives have their bikes back again. And the Sector V operatives are paying number 10 Speed a visit a few weeks later, and we see that Tommy has joined them. Tommy is actually riding the Cruise Master, and we see that number 2 is riding the tricycle. Number 2 is hoping that he can have the Cruise Master back now that he's ridden the tricycle again for a while. But the tricycle pulls out weapons pointed towards number 2. So number 2 figures that he's not going to be able to use the Cruise Master again anytime soon. Next up is the end credits scene. Number 3 is at the central bike hub, and she's heading down a hallway and about to reach a certain room. But then she stops and remembers that she needed to do a maintenance check for Hippie Hop or something along those lines at least. So number 3 leaves, and after number 3 leaves, number 4 pokes his head out of the doorway, and we cut into the room that number 4 is in, and there are several Kids Next Door operatives and Tommy present, and they actually were planning to throw a surprise party. And number 4 complains about them planning a surprise party when it's not even number 3's birthday, and that's how we end this episode. So there you go. This was the third full episode of Codename Kids Next Door in Season 6. Yes, the third full episode in Season 6 of Codename Kids Next Door. And the Gilligan brothers actually got to have a prevalent role in this. That's right. Tommy got to play an important role in Operation Graduates, and number 2 got to play an important role in Operation Caked 4. But yeah, you could say that both the Gilligan brothers got to play an important role in this particular episode. And an interesting detail about this episode is one could say that this could be considered at least an indirect sequel, or maybe a sequel of some kind, direct or indirect, to a comic story. Yes. While, yes, Operation Tricycle wasn't adapted from the comics, but it was you could say that it is you could say that Operation Tricycle is a continuation of a story from the comics. This comic story was called Operation Trike, which showed us a point in the past. Yes, sometime this. Yes, the comic story, Operation Trike, took place before the present day of the series, and we do get to see number 2 riding the tricycle, and the tricycle did show some unruly behavior. Or yes, the tricycle the tricycle showed some unruly behavior and attacked anyone that mocked the tricycle. So sort of like this, it was sort of like this episode. In both Operation Trike and Operation Tricycle, we saw that the tricycle would attack anyone that made fun of the tricycle. And it's actually pretty similar to a story from another Cartoon Network show. There was a segment for The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy that that also dealt with a story about a tricycle that was a sentient or sapient tricycle that attacked other people when the tricycle was insulted. I believe that Billy and Mandy segment was called TRICYCLE of Terror, if I'm not mistaken, and this was also similar to a Stephen King book. I believe it was called Christine, if I'm not mistaken. But this isn't the first time that there's been an evil tricycle story or something along those lines. There's been evil tricycle stories before, but again, it's all about the execution. Or yes, I'm of the mind that execution is more important than how many times the idea is done. And yes, this, at least compared to the Billy and Mandy segment, TRICYCLE of Terror, Operation Tricycle did have its notable differences. I do remember being surprised by that. I do remember being surprised that Codename Kids Next Door went with the idea of an evil tricycle after seeing the Billy and Mandy one, or I definitely recognize the similarities with the Billy and Mandy segment over the whole evil tricycle. And yes, we do find out that in this case, the tricycle was not happy that number 2 decided to ride the Cruise Master after acquiring the Cruise Master, and the tricycle wanted number 2 to ride her again, since number 2 did use female pronouns for the tricycle. And we saw at the end of the episode that number 2 has to ride the tricycle to protect the other bikes and his own well-being too, actually. And this actually relates to something I did appreciate. I did appreciate how the other characters didn't mock number 2 or insult number 2 for riding the tricycle at the end. They recognized that number 2 riding the tricycle was what saved all the bikes at the central bike hub. So I do appreciate that the other characters didn't act like ungrateful jerks to number 2. They actually appreciated the sacrifices that number 2 had to make. And that was the main storyline. But yes, the tricycle being the villain of the episode also seemed to have been intended to be a twist, because initially we're led to believe that Chad was the main villain of Operation Tricycle, but he ended up being a red herring. And Chad actually wasn't trying to antagonize the kids next door. He was just trying to save money for a car. Now, I remember some fans were confused. I remember some fans were confused about Chad trying to save money for a car already, since Chad is supposed to be 13 years old at this point in time, maybe close to 14 years old. And in the United States, or at least most of the United States, 16 is the age for when one can get their driver's license. However, some fans there is also an easy explanation for that, though. Cars can be very expensive, so some fans think it actually would make sense that Chad would try to get a head start and save up the money with a few years before he can actually have a driver's license. So, that's actually a pretty clever way to hand wave why Chad would be concerned about a car when he still has a few years before he can get his driver's license. But Yeah, yeah, I do remember seeing some fans confused about that, but that's a little hand wave or a possible explanation for some fans to work around that reason, and it actually does make sense. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some people in real life that started saving for a car a few years before they actually could even drive, and I guess you could say that does show Chad having a you could say that's Chad being pragmatic or actually having a smart idea, which some fans have noted. Chad did seem like he didn't show much intelligence after he turned traitor, but there is actually a reason for that, or at least a very plausible reason for that, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't want to give it away just yet for the sake of those just following along with these recap and thoughts videos. So otherwise, yes, we did get to see the central bike hub, a new Kids Next Door treehouse, new to us, the viewers anyway, and it does have a pretty cool design, or yes, I think it has a pretty cool design, and Tom Warburton thinks so too. That's right, in one of his blog posts, Tom Warburton did say that the central bike hub might be one of his favorite designs for the Kids Next Door tree houses throughout the show, and yes, I'm inclined to agree with Tom Warburton. I think it's a pretty cool design. So otherwise, I think that might actually be about it. So this episode gave us an episode that focused on both of the Gilligan brothers. Yes, and they did pull a few red herrings too. At first, we think Chad's the main villain, but then we're led to believe Tommy became the main villain, but then we find out the TRICYCLE was actually the main villain. And like I said, the story, while it has a general similarity to the Billy and Mandy segment about an evil tricycle, the execution does still give a different experience compared to the Billy and Mandy segment. And yeah, this episode also could be considered a sequel to a comic story where we actually did get to see number 2 ride the tricycle when he was younger. And that comic story also does feature Mr. Gilligan, although we don't get a clear look at his face. But yes, Mr. Gilligan does appear in this comic story set in the past, and I thought that was a pretty cool detail. And otherwise, yeah, that might be about it. So yeah, I thought this was a good spotlight appearance for both the Gilligan brothers, especially since they each got their own spotlight appearance in previous full episodes, Operation Graduates for Tommy and Operation Cake 4 for number 2. But there we go for now. So as of this video, we've now discussed episode 72 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time.